before we jump into doing anything productive today,
I want us to do something honest, because there's this quiet, almost invisible habit that most of us live with every single day, and we rarely call it what it really is, the way we talk to ourselves.
So let's start with a little thought experiment. I want you to imagine this. You walk into a room and you overhear someone you genuinely, deeply love speaking to themselves. But what you're hearing, it's not gentle, it's not fair, and it's definitely not kind.
And look, this isn't constructive feedback we're talking about. The kinds of things they're saying, they don't just correct a behavior. No, they attack that person's core identity. It's the huge difference between saying, I made a mistake, and saying, I am a mistake. So what's your immediate gut reaction in that moment? Really check in with yourself. Is it anger? That fierce protective instinct that just flares up? Maybe deep compassion? Whatever it is, you recognize it instantly, don't you? You would never call that normal. You'd call it exactly what it is, harmful speech. All right, now let's take that exact same level of awareness and turn it inward, towards ourselves. So if you're willing, I want you to take a quiet moment here for a really honest inventory. What are the, let's say, top 5 worst things you have on replay in your own mind? The things you say to yourself. You don't have to share them with anyone, of course. Just notice them. These are those familiar scripts, right? That old programming we give so much space to. Not because any of it's true, but just because it's familiar. Okay, now let's go back to our scene. But this time, I want you to imagine you overhear another person saying those exact same phrases, your top 5 loops, to that person you love.
You'd have a name for that immediately, wouldn't you? You'd call it a boundary breach, a misuse of power. You'd call it bullying, maybe even harassment. There is no way you would ever call that psychological safety. Because you know, deep down, that words are like blueprints. They literally build a person's inner world.
And this brings us right to the heart of it, the crucial point. What if the one speaking with that tone, with that cruelty, is you? To yourself? Is it really okay to govern yourself with cruelty? To persecute your not yet self as if the very act of becoming is some kind of crime? You know, we blur this line so often. We tell ourselves, oh, I'm just holding myself to a high standard. But sometimes, what we're calling accountability is really just shame wearing a suit. Think about the difference. Real accountability, it focuses on behavior. It aims for growth. It fosters safety. But shame? Shame attacks your very identity. It aims for control. And it fosters cruelty. So, what's the alternative? This is where we make the pivot. This is about a different way forward, one that requires a really rare kind of strength. So I'm inviting you into this. Be fair to yourself. And let's get really clear on what that means. Fairness is not passivity. It is not about letting yourself off the hook. It just means you stop policing your own growth. And instead, you choose to speak to yourself the same way you would speak to someone you love who's in the middle of learning something new. Just remember that part of you that's still growing, the part that's still figuring things out, your not yet self, it's not a threat that needs to be managed. It's not a flaw to be punished. It is simply the proof that you're human. And when we make this pivot, when we move from cruelty to fairness, something really powerful starts to happen. We actually shift out of that mindset of constant judgment and into something, something far more generative. So, it's time. Time to lay down the constant evaluation, to close that inner courtroom, the one where you're always on trial, and instead pick up the joy of discovery. Because one day, the future you is going to look back and smile at these learning parts, not because it was all perfect, but because you kept going, because you kept becoming. Okay, so let's make this super practical. How can you start doing this the very moment you finish listening to me? Here is a really simple 3-step micro practice you can use. First, you catch that harsh voice. This is just awareness, right? Seeing that old programming as it starts to run. Second, you pause. Seriously, just one single breath is enough to break that autopilot loop. And third, you choose one fair sentence. This is all about targeted replacement. We're not here to fight the thought, we're just here to replace it. And that choice doesn't have to be complicated at all. Here are a few powerful options you can just borrow. How about, I'm learning, I'm not failing? That one simple sentence reframes a setback as just feedback, not some final verdict on who you are. Or, I can be honest without being cruel. My not yet self deserves patience. Or maybe my favorite, I'm allowed to grow at a human pace.
So as we begin to wrap up here, I want you to remember this one thing. We're not here to perform healing. We're here to practice truth.
Your practice for today is really just that simple. Catch the thought, pause for a breath, and choose a fair sentence. Thank you for being here, for taking yourself seriously, and for being brave enough to really listen to the way you speak to yourself. This is how we lead ourselves with integrity, with clarity, and with compassion. I'll see you in the next session.